Hey Moon Jade family. Thank you so much for your love and support. Please like, subscribe, and share. It's a simple way to keep our stories coming. I couldn't do this without you. Thank you for being here. Now, grab a seat and let's continue the story. The evening had begun like a dream and ended like a nightmare. Naima Adesala sat beside her boyfriend, Cairo Xu, in the sleek limousine as it cut through Shanghai's glowing streets. She'd worn her best dress, emerald silk that hugged her curves, and had spent hours convincing herself that tonight would be the beginning of forever. They were on their way to meet his father, the legendary CEO Xu Tianlei, a Mun whose name alone carried the weight of empires. Cairo had promised that once his father accepted her, nothing could come between them. Naima had believed him. But she hadn't been prepared for the storm in Tianlei's eyes. The meeting was short, brutal, and unforgettable. Tianlei barely glanced at her before dismissing her entirely. His voice, cool and precise, cut like glass. You are not suitable. My son will not marry you. Naima's stomach dropped. Excuse me? But Cairo didn't defend her. Didn't fight. Didn't even hesitate. Then it's over, he said flatly, reaching for his phone as if she were already forgotten. Her heart shattered in silence. He walked away before she could even breathe, leaving her broken in the shadow of his father's empire. And the very next day, Cairo appeared in public with another woman on his arm, a polished socialite he boasted about introducing to his father. Naima burned. That night, drowning in fury and humiliation, she found herself in a bar near the Bund. The music was too loud, the whiskey too strong, but it wasn't enough to quiet the storm inside her. She ordered drink after drink, hating the taste but craving the numbness. It was there she saw him again. Xu Tianlei. He was out of place in the dimly lit bar, his tailored black suit immaculate, his presence coiled power and command. When their eyes met, Naima froze. The alcohol blurred her judgment, but her pain sharpened her tongue. You ruined everything, she hissed when he came near. Because of you, he left me. Tianlei's gaze never wavered. If he left that easily, then he was never yours to keep. His calmness only fueled her rage. You think you know everything, don't you? That you control everything. His lips curved faintly. I don't think. I know. Something reckless snapped inside her. Maybe it was the liquor, maybe it was the heartbreak, but in that moment, she wanted to shatter his composure, to burn down his control. She leaned in, pressed her lips to his, and dared him to resist. He didn't. The kiss deepened, fierce and consuming, and before she knew it he was leading her out of the bar, into the back of a black car, then through the towering gates of his mansion. The night was a blur of silk sheets, forbidden heat, and a fire that terrified her as much as it consumed her. When dawn broke, reality struck. Naima bolted upright, heart hammering, the weight of the scandal crashing over her. Xu Tianlei, her ex's father. What had she done? She scrambled to gather her clothes, whispering, "This can't happen. I can't." But before she could flee, Tianlei was there, blocking the doorway, his shirt undone, his presence overwhelming. You're not running, he said coolly. Marry me. Give me a child. Naima's eyes widened in horror. What? Are you insane? You're my boyfriend's father. Ex-boyfriend, Tianlei corrected softly, stepping closer. And I don't make offers twice. Panic clawed at her chest. No. I refuse. She shoved past him, desperate for escape. But fate twisted cruelly. As she reached the grand staircase, voices echoed from the foyer. Cairo. And his new girlfriend. They were laughing, stepping boldly into the house as if to flaunt their new union. Rage exploded in Naima's chest. She seized the nearest object, a priceless painting hanging on the wall, and with one furious swing, smashed it against them. The frame shattered, their screams cutting through the mansion as they stumbled back in shock. Get out, she roared, hurling them into the rain. Both of you. They fled, cursing, their humiliation trailing after them. Breathing hard, Naima turned, only to find Tianlei leaning in the doorway, expression unreadable. That painting, he said calmly, was worth $1 billion. Her blood ran cold. Then I'll pay you back, she snapped, though her voice trembled. I'll find a way. He stepped closer, his eyes dark and possessive. Or you could accept my offer. Be mine. Bear my child. Choose, Naima. Debt or destiny. Her hands shook as she clutched her clothes to her chest. Without answering, she ran, the sound of his voice following her into the storm. But deep down, she already knew Xu Tianlei wasn't finished with her. And this was only the beginning. Naima didn't sleep that night. Or the next. Or the one after. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his hands on her, heard his voice in the dark, "Marry me. Give me a child." She hated how the memory both terrified and thrilled her. She hated that Xu Tianlei had carved himself into her mind when all she wanted was to forget. So she buried herself in routine. Work became her refuge. Mornings at the architectural firm where she was a junior designer, afternoons sketching glass towers she would never live in, evenings staring at blueprints until her eyes blurred. But routine couldn't silence the whispers. Shanghai's social media had already caught fire. Rumors of a scandal at the Xu mansion, whispers about Cairo's sudden coldness, about Naima's disappearance from his side. She ignored it all. She had to. Her only relief came from confiding in her best friend, Dr. Aisha Bello. They met in Aisha's tiny clinic one humid afternoon, the walls smelling of antiseptic and jasmine tea. Naima sat on the exam table, her head in her hands. "I've ruined everything," she muttered. "I don't even know who I am anymore." Aisha listened patiently, then handed her a glass of water. "Start from the beginning. All of it." The story tumbled out: Cairo's betrayal, the drunken night, Tianlei's impossible demand, the painting worth billions. By the time Naima finished, her throat was raw, her cheeks wet with tears. Aisha was silent for a long moment. Then she leaned back and crossed her arms. "Congratulations." Naima's head shot up. "What?" "Naima, listen to me." Aisha's voice was firm, almost clinical. "You fell into bed with the most powerful man in Shanghai. He wants you. Do you know what women would give for that chance? You're terrified, but maybe, just maybe, this is your chance to stop chasing crumbs and sit at the table yourself." Naima recoiled. "Are you insane? He's my ex's father. And? Your ex didn't even hesitate to throw you away." Aisha's eyes softened. "Naima, stop punishing yourself. You have power now, whether you asked for it or not. Use it." The words haunted her long after she left the clinic. For weeks, Naima forced herself to live as if nothing had happened. She threw herself into her projects, declined calls from numbers she didn't recognize, and ignored the lingering ache in her body that told her Xu Tianlei hadn't been a dream. But fate is cruel. One evening, rain slicked the streets as she drove home, exhaustion dragging at her eyelids. She didn't see the car until it was too late. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and then, darkness. When she opened her eyes, the ceiling above her was white and sterile. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled her lungs. Panic rose until she heard a voice. Low. Commanding. Familiar. "Tianlei," she whispered. He was there, standing beside her hospital bed, his suit immaculate despite the urgency in his eyes. His hand hovered near hers, not touching, but close enough to remind her of everything. "You're awake," he said, his tone controlled but edged with relief. "I brought you here." Naima's chest tightened. "Why? Why do you keep following me?" "Because you belong to me," he answered simply. Her pulse stumbled. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the door opened before she could. Aisha stepped in, her expression unreadable. She carried a file in her hand, and when her gaze flicked to Naima, something like guilt passed over her face. Naima's stomach dropped. "What is it?" Aisha hesitated. "The tests we ran after the accident," she swallowed. "Naima, you're pregnant. Already a few months along." The room spun. Naima gripped the sheets as if they could anchor her. "No, that's not." "A few months," Aisha repeated gently. "It's his." Her voice broke. "Aisha, please, don't tell him." But it was too late. Xu Tianlei's eyes had darkened, his jaw set like steel. He had heard every word. He stepped forward, his shadow swallowing her panic. "So it's true." His voice was softer than thunder, but no less dangerous. "You carry my child." Naima shook her head desperately. "No, I can't." But Tianlei cut her off, his gaze blazing with possession. "Enough. This ends here. You will not run again. I will take responsibility for you, and for my child." And just like that, the trap snapped shut. Naima realized with horror that no matter how far she tried to run, Xu Tianlei would always find her. Because she wasn't just entangled with him anymore. She was carrying his blood. Naima wished she could disappear. The hospital discharge papers were barely signed when Xu Tianlei's men whisked her away, not to her apartment, not to safety, but to the Xu estate. The gates loomed like iron jaws, shutting her out from the life she had known. Marble pillars lined the driveway, lanterns glowed against the night, and the mansion itself seemed carved out of arrogance and old money. She clutched her handbag like it could protect her. I can't stay here. I don't belong. Tianlei's gaze cut to her, sharp and unyielding. You belong where I say you belong. The words silenced her. She hated how they made her tremble, not only with fear but with something deeper, darker, an unwilling recognition that this man had already claimed her. Inside, the house was alive with whispers. Servants bowed, eyes averted, but she felt their stares burn into her. And then, him. Cairo. Her ex froze halfway down the sweeping staircase, his shirt undone at the collar, a glass of whiskey in hand. The moment his gaze landed on her, the world stopped. Naima. His voice was hoarse. Her throat locked, but Tianlei's voice filled the silence like a verdict. She's here because she carries my child. The glass slipped from Cairo's hand, shattering against the marble. No, he said, his voice breaking into fury. This can't. Tianlei stepped closer, his presence swallowing the room. It has happened. Accept it. Cairo's chest heaved as betrayal twisted his face. He turned on Naima, his eyes bloodshot, desperate. You slept with my father? The shame cut deep, but Naima lifted her chin. You never cared about me, Cairo. Don't act like you do now. The slap of her words stung them both. His face crumpled with rage, with something like regret, but Tianlei silenced it with a single, cold declaration. She will be my wife. The household gasped. Even Naima felt the floor tilt beneath her. What? She whispered, her voice strangled. Tianlei's eyes locked on hers, dark and commanding. You are carrying my heir. There will be no scandal, no whispers of shame. You will marry me, Naima, and the world will know you as Madame Xu. Her heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to run, but Cairo's bitter laugh sliced through her paralysis. Perfect. My ex-girlfriend, my stepmother. His words dripped venom. How far will you sink, Naima? Her vision blurred with tears, but Tianlei didn't waver. He reached for her hand, his grip firm, sealing her fate in front of everyone. This union is not for debate, he said. A new voice, frail but steady, echoed from the upper balcony. Indeed it is not. All heads turned. There stood Madame Xu, the family matriarch. Age had not dulled her steel. Draped in silk, her cane tapping against the floor, she looked down at them with eyes sharp as a hawk's. If my grandson's recklessness has driven this girl into your arms, Tianlei, she said, her gaze flicking briefly to Naima, then let it be so. I have seen enough betrayal in this family. Perhaps she will bring balance. Naima's knees weakened. Support from the most feared woman in Shanghai was the last thing she had expected. Cairo stormed out, his fury echoing down the halls, but the matriarch's word was law. And in that moment, Naima realized escape had vanished. She was no longer just a woman who made a mistake one drunken night. She was about to become the wife of Xu Tianlei, the most ruthless CEO in Shanghai, and the stepmother to the man who had once sworn he loved her. The Xu estate became Naima's cage, and, strangely, her shelter. Days bled into evenings under the weight of servants' whispers and Cairo's venomous glares. Yet beneath the suffocating tension, something unexpected began to shift. Xu Tianlei was everywhere. At first, his presence was suffocating, his shadow cast over every decision she tried to make. But slowly, Naima began to notice the cracks in his armor. One morning, she found him in the garden, kneeling beside a bed of orchids. The ruthless CEO who terrified boardrooms was gently brushing soil from a fragile bloom. She stopped, startled. You, garden. He didn't look up. These orchids were my late wife's favorite. They die easily if you don't pay attention. Like people. His voice carried no arrogance, only a quiet ache. Naima felt her chest tighten. For the first time, she saw not just the men who had trapped her, but the men who had lost something, maybe everything. Another evening, after dinner, a storm cracked across the Shanghai skyline. She flinched at the thunder, and he noticed. Without a word, he draped his coat around her shoulders. You should never be cold in my house, he said, his voice low. The coat smelled like cedarwood and rain. Her heart betrayed her, skipping hard against her ribs. But not everything softened. Cairo made sure of that. He stormed into the dining hall one night, tossing a file onto the table. Photos spilled out, grainy shots of Naima leaving work, sitting at a cafe, laughing with her friend. She's playing you, Cairo spat at his father. She's using you for your money. For your name. Tianlei's jaw clenched, but his eyes burned with steady fire. He didn't even glance at the photos. Enough, he said. You will show her respect. She was mine first. Cairo's voice cracked. And now you're parading her as my stepmother? It's disgusting. The silence after his outburst was heavy. Naima's hands shook under the table. But Tianlei's voice came, steady and commanding. You lost her the moment you threw her away. Now, she is mine, and she will be your madam. Pour her tea tomorrow morning. Publicly. The order was a sword. Cairo's face drained of color, but he had no choice. The Xu heir was bound by tradition. Naima's breath caught. It wasn't just possession anymore. It was protection. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the storm, the orchids, the coat, the fire in his eyes when he defended her. And against her will, she felt the walls she had built begin to crack. The wedding was arranged quickly, under Madame Xu's approval. The mansion bustled with preparations, silk gowns arriving in boxes, jewelers presenting diamonds under velvet trays, chefs whispering over lavish menus. On the morning of the tea ceremony, Naima sat dressed in a scarlet qipao, her hair pinned with golden combs, palms slick with sweat. Cairo entered, his steps heavy, his face a storm. The tray shook in his hands, but he bent and poured tea for her, bowing low. Madame Xu, he muttered, his voice dripping poison. Gasps rippled across the room. The mighty Xu heir bowing to the woman he once discarded. Naima's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at Tianlei, who stood beside her like an unmovable pillar, pride in his dark gaze. For the first time since that drunken night, she realized escape was no longer what she wanted. This was her place now. And Tianlei, somehow, terrifyingly, was becoming hers. The Xu mansion glittered with impossible wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the hall, silk drapes rippled in the evening air, and every power broker in Shanghai sat waiting to witness Xu Tianlei's shocking wedding. Naima stood in scarlet silk, her hands trembling against the cool weight of jade bangles. Each step down the aisle felt like a war, between fear, shame, and the strange, terrifying warmth growing in her chest when her gaze brushed Tianlei's. He looked immovable in his tailored black suit, eyes fixed on her as though nothing else in the world existed. But beneath the applause, danger waited. As the priest began the vows, a voice broke through the ceremony, bitter and desperate. Stop this madness. Cairo staggered forward, his face flushed with fury, his fists clenched. Gasps rippled through the hall. He pointed at Naima, his voice cracking. She doesn't love you. She's using you, father, just like she used me. Tianlei's jaw tightened, but Naima spoke before he could. No, Cairo. You used me. You discarded me when it was convenient. You left me to rot in my shame. Your father may be many things, but he never abandoned me. Whispers raced through the crowd. Cairo's face twisted, his rage boiling. He lunged, not at her, but at the ceremonial vase set at the altar, a priceless Xu heirloom. If I can't stop this marriage, then I'll destroy everything. The vase teetered on the edge of the pedestal, until Tianlei's hand shot out, gripping his son's wrist with crushing force. The silence was deafening. You are no longer fit to bear my name, Tianlei said coldly. Guards, remove him. Cairo's screams echoed through the hall as he was dragged away, his betrayal laid bare for all to see. The ceremony resumed, but Naima's heart thundered with the weight of what had just happened. When the vows were spoken, Tianlei slid the ring onto her finger. His touch was steady, his gaze unreadable, but when his hand lingered over hers, she felt something undeniable. For better or worse, her life had just been bound to his. Weeks later, the Xu mansion no longer felt like a cage. It was still vast, intimidating, but slowly Naima had begun to claim it. She oversaw the staff with surprising ease, their initial skepticism softening into respect. Madame Xu often summoned her for tea, her sharp eyes hiding something almost like fondness. And Tianlei, though still stern, still commanding, showed her glimpses of warmth she never expected. Quiet dinners in the garden. The way he brushed a stray curl from her face before meetings. The rare, unguarded smiles when he thought no one was watching. Cairo's betrayal had left scars, but the house no longer echoed with his rage. Instead, it pulsed with something new, something Naima wasn't ready to name, but couldn't deny. She was no longer the discarded girlfriend. She was Madame Xu. Wife. Mother-to-be. A woman who had stumbled into fire and found her place in the blaze. And beside her, Xu Tianlei watched with dark, steady eyes, as if daring the world to challenge the life they were now building together. The delivery room was quiet after the storm of cries and rushing nurses. Naima lay exhausted, her hair damp against her temples, her chest rising and falling as she clutched the tiny, swaddled bundle to her heart. A boy. Their son. Tianlei stood at her side, his hand covering hers, his usual steel melting into something unrecognizable. Awe. Tremor. Love. He's perfect, Naima whispered, her voice breaking as tears slid down her cheeks. Tianlei bent low, pressing his forehead to hers. For once, the man who had built empires with an iron will let himself crumble in front of her. You've given me more than an heir, Naima, he murmured. You've given me a reason to live again. I love you. The words shook her. They weren't a command, or a demand, but a confession carved from the deepest part of him. Her lips trembled as she answered. I love you too, Tianlei. Even when I tried not to. I couldn't stop. Their son stirred softly between them, a small sound like a promise. And in that fragile, breathtaking moment, Naima realized the truth. She hadn't just survived scandal, betrayal, and fire. She had found her forever, in the arms of the man who once seemed untouchable. Together, they were unstoppable.